welcome to Sports Guys Iowa, the Dr. Bowser basketball show. I'm John Gunderson, a pinch hitting for Dr. Bowser tonight. We got on Chad Harberts from the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, and we're going to talk basketball tonight. A little bit of boys, a little bit of girls. We're really going to kind of dive into who he sees now that we're getting to postseason, has a great chance to make a run into state from the Cedar Valley. So welcome, Chad.
Well, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun on the last call. It was just an absolute blast. We're going to talk a lot more about boys and girls basketball over the next year plus with Chad. So Chad, let's kind of start first. Let's start from your perspective for the Cedar Valley. Girls are going to be up first. Who do you see has a chance of making a run at the various classes?
You know, the biggest class is always kind of tough because it's just basically one or two games to state. And the way the state sets up, as you know, the brackets in all the classes, it's all designed for the best teams to make it to the final eight. So there isn't a lot of upsets. If you're playing at home in the postseason, you're supposed to win and go on, because that's just simply how it's set up based on records. For our area, like if you go in the biggest class, if you go into 5A, the cream of our area all year long has been Cedar Falls, and they've got a decent squad. They shoot a ton of three-pointers. I mean, they really get up 40, 45 a game. They don't have the big inside presence they had a year ago with a 6'3" Grace Hannum, who's playing volleyball at UNI now. So they really shoot a lot of threes. They do have a good perimeter game. Harris Finley is their best player. She looks taller and more athletic than she did a year ago. She's already committed to go to Drake next year. I love her game because she's the leading scorer, but she doesn't have to be. If they're guarding her tight and everybody else is shooting, she'll go in and get every offensive rebound. She'll make every extra pass. She's not one of these, if I'm the leading scorer, I got to be shooting as soon as the ball gets tipped. She waits and finds her rhythm, and then she kind of gets going. They've got some decent people around her. Jordan Oakland, who is the daughter of the assistant coach for the UNI women's basketball team. She's a junior. She's kind of coming to her own this year as a pretty good shooter. They've got some great perimeter people, but I think when Cedar Falls runs into some teams that have good interior height, that's going to be a problem for them. And I saw it just a couple of weeks ago when Cedar Rapids, Washington was in town. They got the big girl inside, and that just creates problems that Cedar Falls doesn't have an answer for. Now, if they're hitting threes and making them, they can beat anybody. But you get to state and you see a Johnston with their big presence inside, or you see a Dowling Catholic with their big presence inside. I think that makes it a lot tougher on Cedar Falls to maybe go all the way. But certainly they're going to, I think, make it to state. And then you do say anything can happen once you get there. But when I look at 5A, I just don't see how Johnston's beatable. I mean, they're undefeated. Dowling Catholic's probably the second best team in the state. Dowling Catholic has lost 3 games this year, and 2 of them are to Johnston. I just don't think, with the Janika Lewis girl that's going to Notre Dame, that chose Notre Dame over Iowa, I just don't see a weakness on the Johnston squad. They got a tight rotation. No one's challenged them yet. And I just don't see anybody besides Johnston winning state. I think if anybody else does win state in Class 5A, that would be considered an upset.
Yeah, Chad, I would agree with you. I've been able to watch a lot of the Des Moines games being based here. Johnson, I think, is on a 72-game heater, or 73 now, 74, somewhere in that total, going for their third one. Janika Lewis, seen her play in person a few times. What a fantastic player. I mean, going to Notre Dame, one of the best programs in women's basketball. But they've had a lot of close games this year.
Yeah.
Dowling is good, but they've got a star last year who's now at Creighton. So they're excellent. Northwest Waukee has a lot of juniors and sophomores. They've been really close. They also got Dowling one game. I think they've got a shot. Strangely enough, I watched Johnston play Iowa City West last night on a feed. West was in the game, and Cedar Rapids washed. I think although it's probably the Johnston Invitational, I think those are all teams, including Cedar Falls, that can win it. And last year, there was really no doubt. It was Dowling and Johnston.
Right. I think the one thing you see at the state tournament and I'm not a big fan of it, but I understand why it happens, is what you're going to see is teams that have gotten to state that don't have the firepower of a Johnston or a Dowling Catholic are going to grind that game down.
Yep.
They're going to play 27, 28 seconds of every offensive possession. They're going to try and keep that game in the 30s as their best shot to win. And that can work. In a one-game winner-take-all situation, that can work. I don't know if you can win state playing that way 3 games, but certainly you could pull an upset somewhere in one game. But at the end of the day, in basketball, talent always kind of steps out. Whoever has the most talent is going to win the game more often than not. And you have to be a little bit deeper in state tournament play than you do during the regular season. In the regular season, you can get by some nights. Your best player maybe is in foul trouble. Well, you got 3 or 4 pretty good players too that are better than everybody else on the other team. At state, you got to be a little bit deeper. You got to be able to go 7 or 8 deep, and those 3 that come off the bench have to be as good as the 5 that started. And that's how you win state.
Yeah, I think that's really good counsel. So let's jump over, and then we'll come back to all classes in the Cedar Valley. Let's jump over to the boys. Let's go to the largest boys class, 4A. And like you said, it's always confusing for me. Biggest class in girls, 5A, but boys are 4A. So their brackets are out. Let's talk about the teams. Obviously, Cedar Falls in your area is number 1. And let's talk about the teams we think can make a run at the state title in 4A.
Well, Cedar Falls, obviously the number 1 team, and they should be. They've gone undefeated. They beat Waukee Northwest when Waukee Northwest was the number 1 team in the state. I think they've earned that spot as the number 1 overall team. I like the Cedar Falls team a lot. I like last year's team, the way it was composed, and you've got 3 of those 5 starters back with Will Gertis, with Leighton Wolf, with Jaden Kimbrough. So there's 3 of your 5 starters back. So you lose the 2 senior guards last year of the Cedar Falls team that went to the state semifinals, but you replace them with Parker Burns, who was arguably the best player at Waterloo West last year, who transfers over to Cedar Falls, and then Carson Gary, who was a freshman last year, but the first guy off the bench for Cedar Falls, is now the other starting guards. I think their top 5 are very solid. But again, when it comes to Cedar Falls, is how much of a drop-off are you going to get if you go to the bench, especially if you lose, say Will Gertis gets into foul trouble, or Leighton Wolf gets into foul trouble, and there's not another 6A guy to come in or a 6-7 guy to come in, and now you're facing Waukee Northwest, or you're facing or Waukee or somebody else with some big guys. That's the issue. I love the Cedar Falls team. I love the way they're playing. I think I've seen them 4 times so far this year. I'll see them again here pretty soon. But that's always the key, is if somebody is having an off night or if somebody gets in foul trouble, can that replacement player, that backup player, step up and have the same kind of impact, even for a few minutes, when you're trying to weather the storm against a really good team?
Yeah, Chad, I would say you're spot on with Cedar Falls. Excellent team. I think one thing you said that I'll pick up on is the big men, right? Let's go down to Waukee. They got Jacobson. They got a great team. They got Max, who can get in the middle. They got Jay White. They've got talent all over. Landon Hansen.
Right.
They're big guy dependent. If Jacobson gets into foul trouble, that's a problem for them. Same thing with Waukee Northwest. Well, Landon Davis got in foul trouble right away in the state title game last year against Valley. That put them behind the 8 ball, and they never caught up. I think that big man foul trouble thing, I think really affects all the top 4. That includes Dowling Catholic. If Coley and Charlie Crane, either one gets into foul trouble, they're not as strong. It just looks like those are the 4 top teams coming in. I'd say Dubuque Senior's right there in kind of behind them. And last night they had a heck of a game against Cedar Falls that went down to the wire.
Had a shot at the buzzer to tie it up.
They did. And they got Tevin Schultz. They've been there a couple times. I think they got a chance to advance. But to me, that's kind of the 5 that have the opportunity. But looking at the brackets, Prairie's a number 1 in the brackets. Des Moines Roosevelt, I saw them last night. They didn't have a good night. Johnston, I think, has a chance to get through there. The interesting one to me is that Prairie North Scott Bettendorf one. Chris, I think your team, North Scott's got a shot to get out of there on that one.
I think so too. As I'm looking at it, I got to get that right sub-state bracket. Sub-state 6, I think North Scott has an opportunity to beat Davenport West in the first round on the 23rd. And then they've had a couple of really close games with Bettendorf. I think they're very close. I spoke a little bit to the Bettendorf coach a few weeks ago, and they are guard heavy. And so while he said they do have a couple of big men that are serviceable, and I think the way that he would put it is that they work into their offense, right? A very open pass, kind of old school motion kind of offense, and they can hit outside shots from time to time. But North Scott's got some explosive athletes, and if they're hitting from the outside, I think they're really tough to beat. And obviously, call me a homer, of course, which is okay. But I like North Scott to beat Davenport West and then to upset Bettendorf. And it sets up a really interesting matchup with Prairie to go to state.
Yeah. Chris, I would say the other two sub-states that I think there could be an upset. Ames is the number one in sub-state 2. Saw them play earlier this year. They're good. I heard one of their big men is kind of banged up and hurt.
He's out for the season. Yeah, I was getting ready to say that. I think there's going to be a wild card come out of sub-state 2. Because I'm pretty sure the big guy, I think he's out for the year. I know they're 19-2, but I think they lost maybe their best player a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, John, one thing that you said on an earlier pod where we were kind of going through the top 10 of Class 4A is how much you liked Urbandale. And they're in that sub-state too because of how hard they played and how scrappy they were.
Yeah. I think they've got a real good chance of coming out of that. The other one that I think is very much a wild card is the one that is sub-state 7. I saw Des Moines Roosevelt play last night. They got really manhandled by Waukee Northwest. That game could have been 50 points. The clock was running pretty early in the second half there. But Johnston is tough. Johnston plays really hard. Courtney Henderson is the head coach at Johnston, former Waterloo East.
Legend.
And I've seen them play, Chad, a couple times in person. They got a couple guards, Tino and Cavill. They got a nice big man. They're scary. That's a team that if they get to state, no one's going to want to play them.
Mm-hmm. You know, I see Waterloo East in that bracket, and I've seen them 3 or 4 times this year too. And I tell you what, if they could just put it together, they could be dangerous. They're starting 4 sophomores and 1 senior, and they've been erratic. They've won some games they probably should have lost. They've certainly lost some games they should have won. But when he can get them to slow down about 3 miles an hour over what they want to play at and make an extra pass, they are a really, really solid team. It's just hard to get them to slow down and do that. They get caught up in whatever the pace of the game is. Instead of trying to dictate it themselves, they get caught up in what's going on. And that's a lot of it's just youth. A year from now, when those guys are all juniors, I think they'll be a lot different, but they are a dangerous team. They don't close out real well, which is why they're 9-12, but they're a team that can scare the heck out of you for the first 30 minutes of a game.
I think that's really interesting because in that bracket, they could get on a run and get there. Right. Placed. Because seeing Roosevelt, obviously a strong club with some good players, but there's an opportunity for them to advance in that group. I think that one there, anybody can come out of it. The other places, I think we could see some major upsets. Seeing Norwalk play, they got a couple shooters. They could give Dowling Catholic a game. And Ankeny has a couple of great players. They play a slowdown game. They could come out of there. Those would be big surprises out of those 2 brackets, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, anything can happen this time of year. Certainly you get hot at the right time. You have just one good night. And it's what I was telling the Grundy Center people here on Wednesday, the day before the Union game. And Grundy Center was 20-0. And I was telling the guys I have coffee with in the morning, I said, Grundy Center better bring their game tomorrow night because I just watched Union destroy Hudson. I mean, just destroy Hudson the night before. And then Union comes in here 2 nights later and hands Grundy Center their first loss. All it takes is a little bit of confidence and a couple guys that are feeling it. And it can be in the 32 minutes, it can be a big upset.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Chad, keep going on this Cedar Valley. Let's go down in class, talk about the other teams you think can come out of it. Because on our last podcast, you were kind of talking about Hudson being as a dark horse.
Well, and I liked Hudson when they're playing well, I really did like Hudson, but when I saw Union and I saw how deep Union was, and I saw the fact that Union, without a real true big man to like clog up the middle, still convinced Hudson to not put the ball inside, which is where their strength is, because they got a 6'6" sophomore in there. That surprised me a little bit. So now I'm actually looking at that 2A Substate 6, and I think that Columbus Catholic has a real shot at winning tomorrow night, and that sets up a game against Union in the semifinals.
Yeah.
And Columbus Catholic is a team that has some decent players. Monty Robinson, the coach's son's a solid player. They got some 3-point shooters. They had a transfer this year, Elijah Evans, who was the leading scorer in the Metro a year ago for what was then Waterloo Christian, now called Cedar Ridge Christian. He transferred over, so he's another impact 3-point shooter. Now, I look at this and I'm thinking, well, Hudson had to play a first-round game against an Old-Wine team that has struggled all year. I think they were winless. What's it going to be like to come back a couple days later and go to Columbus Catholic and play and try and win there when Columbus Catholic's playing pretty well? Now I'm thinking Columbus Catholic has a shot to make it another round. And then Union, I know Caden Sorensen got hurt late in the Grundy Center game. I've not heard how bad he was hurt, but I know he got hurt late in that game. But even if he is not playing, which I don't know, they still have a team that has 9 seniors that were in the state tournament last year. That's going to be a tough team to beat to get to that sub-state final.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's good. You know, and if I'm wrong on this, we'll cut it out of the podcast, but I think that the Waterloo Columbus gym had some of the worst lighting and worst floor in the history of high school basketball. If you go on a road in a gym that's like that, that's a trap, you're going to be in for a game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have, as you guys know, when you have to face a conference opponent in the postseason, there's a little bit more kind of to it because you got some familiarity. You maybe have some animosity. You certainly are looking for some bragging rights that you're the better team in the conference. So whenever there's a rematch of any, I don't care what conference it is, I don't care if it's NICL, if it's Mississippi Valley, whoever it is, CIML, it doesn't matter. I think you just have that extra it kind of jazzes that game up just a little bit more when you're playing a conference team in the postseason.
Yeah, I agree. Chad, on the girls' side, taking a look all classes, who do you think's got a chance out of Cedar Valley to make a run?
Well, I think our best shot absolutely is Denver, just because they have all those senior girls, they have all that experience in state. They certainly have everything you want. So you want a post player inside that can get you a buck whenever she needs to. They got that. They got a 6'1" girl. You want an athletic rebounder distributor. They got 6' Channing Johnson. You want 3-point shooters. They can put 3 or 4 of them out there whenever they need to. They're the kind of team you don't want to face because there's not a lot of weaknesses there. There really isn't. And if you make a run on them, like I said, they have so many plays they can run that they know they can go back on the floor for timeout and they say, we're going to score on this play because there's nobody in this class who can stop this play this one time. And so I think Denver certainly is very dangerous. I'm a little biased. I think Grundy Center has got a fantastic shot at going deep. Grundy Center brought back all 5 starters a year ago. They've got 4 senior starters this year, and their best player is a junior and Ava Munt. I think certainly Grundy Center has a chance to go deep in the playoffs too. Unfortunately, when you get down in the lower classes, unlike the bigger classes where there's a lot less teams, you're going to run into powerhouses as soon as you get to the quarterfinals, certainly the semifinals. It really is so much tougher to get to state in the lower classes than it is in the bigger classes.
I agree with you. Chris, you got any other thoughts? I'm going to ask one more question, but I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, for sure. So as we were taking a look the other day at the 3A and 4A sub-state brackets, but I continued to wonder, like, is there any player on any one of these teams that is maybe we don't talk about a lot, right? Is there somebody that is flying under the radar that all of a sudden come postseason play might be able to step up and grab some headlines?
I'll jump in there. I'll talk 4 because that's who we're recovering, Chris. I'd say Tevin Schultz out of Dubuque Senior. He's a solid D2 player. Before the transfer portal, he was a D1 player. I know he's getting a lot of accolades, but he's kind of stuck in Dubuque Senior. He's become their all-time scorer. I think a lot of casual fans probably don't know who he is, but he could get to the state tournament and blow it up. He would be one that I would really put out there. Chad?
It's awesome.
I would say this about Cedar Falls, because you know that Gertis and Kimbrough are going to do all the scoring. And Kimbrough obviously had the monster game against Waukee Northwest, which was a big reason why they even won that game. Because if you go back and look at that game, Gertis didn't score until about 2 minutes to go in the second quarter in that game at all. But I think with Cedar Falls, Leighton Wolf is such an X factor, and he's not going to score. Now, he can. There's nights he might go off for 12 or 14. But if Leighton Wolf is playing great defense and staying out of foul trouble and grabbing rebounds, he makes Cedar Falls such a better team because it frees up those stars to be stars. So I think when Leighton Wolf is on and doing dirty work, that's, again, we're not going to say, well, Leighton Wolf won that game. But as a coach, you're going to say Leighton Wolf did a bunch for us to win that game because he did all the dirty things that don't make the stat sheet, that make it look like Gertis or Kimbrough or Burns were playing one-on-one the whole time. And that's a big factor because there's times where I've seen Cedar Falls struggle a lot because Leighton Wolf was in foul trouble. So now you can double Gertis. And there's times I've seen Leighton Wolf get every rebound and get himself to the free throw line 12 times, and Cedar Falls is blowing somebody out because of it.
I'd have one other. Alfred Coley from Dowling Catholic. He's not there yet. He's a junior, but his body, his athleticism, as he develops, he could go off in the state. If they get there, he could really be a star, but I also think he's one of the stars to look at next year. I mean, he's in 6'8", he's legit. He could be a future star. He's still putting it together. And I think everybody looking at the class looks at Harrington from North Scott because he's going to Iowa State. But Alfred Coley might be one of the best players coming back next year.
And I would say if that North Scott prediction is going to come through, for me, it's probably going to be Bashawn Wilmington, the sophomore from North Scott. He's shooting 43% from the three-point line. He's 113 of 242, so shooting 47% from the field. And he's a sophomore. He's maybe their number 2 option, but still as a sophomore, I think that if they're going to make a run, it can't just be Harrington. It's got to be a combination of those guys, and Wilmington's really going to have to step up in that sub-state.
I think those are 3 or 4 people that could make all tournament team, depending on how they go, if they get there and run. We talked a lot about 4A, but I think 4A is 4 or 5 teams. We're going to find out who comes through it. Because are all 5 of those teams going to make it? I don't know. There's enough talent in 4A that a lot can happen there. And Chad, it was really good that you were talking about the teams you got. It's really interesting. And we're going to pull like heck for the Denver girls. They're the little Cyclones. They got some nice colors, and that's a proud town. So if they were to get there, Denver would pack Des Moines.
Yeah, that's one of those towns that the whole town is going to be at every sporting event for sure.
Yep. Guys, any other closing thoughts you want to give, Chad? And what's on your docket for the rest of the week? Probably ball game after ball game.
Let's see. I'm going to Waterloo East in about 90 minutes to see their girls play. Then tomorrow I'll be at the Columbus Catholic Hudson game. Friday I'll see Grundy Center play Jessup on the girls' side. Saturday I'll be at UNI men's basketball at 5 o'clock. I got a pretty full week, but I didn't want to say this to you guys. I had a chance to watch the podcast you just put out talking about girls basketball.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really good. I thought it was tremendous. And I'm glad the more people that are talking about what's going on in girls basketball, the better, because this has been going on now for a while. And as I shared with John this morning, and Chris, you'll see it at some point. I know you've been working all day, but I wrote a long feature about girls basketball a year ago for the Courier and talked to people like Dr. Tony Pappas, who's been at West for 50 years. And there's no one size fits all solution, because what's good for 5A is not necessarily good for 1A, and what's good for a rural school, not necessarily what's good for a metro school. But I'm glad we're talking. I'm glad there's people that are concerned. Girls basketball is so important in the prep history of this state. And it will forever be so important because it was the backbone sport for a long time. And it's a shame to see what's happened. I mean, part of it is the rise of girls wrestling. That's been a big part of it. And Dr. Pappas talked to me about that. Like, if you're bad at wrestling, you lose in 10 seconds and you go home. But if you're bad at basketball, you're embarrassed in front of your family and friends for 90 minutes. And there is some truth to that. Obviously, bowling has picked up a few kids. Some of the things like speech contest, band contesting, they picked up some kids. The one thing I would say that might be one size fits all, and this is something I've been about for 40 years, is we need to get the club AAU element out of high school sports. And when I say don't want it to go away, no, I understand what's there. But I've said for a long time that there should be a ban on summer recruiting, that coaches should be able to recruit from May 15 to September 1. And then there wouldn't be so much emphasis put on the AAU coach over the high school coach. And that's where I think a lot of this has happened, is the influence the high school coach used to have over the high school kid has been diminished by AAU and club stuff. And we'll hear about club volleyball is big. Well, part of the reason club volleyball is big is because club volleyball coaches will tell kids, if you don't play club for us full time, you're not going to play club for us at all. Well, that's a ridiculous thing. That's a ridiculous statement to make to a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girl and tell her to make a choice between what sport she wants to play or she can't play at all. That's dumb. That has bothered me, that we've diminished the influence of that high school coach who sees this kid every single day in class, at practice, and in games. And we've increased the influence of this guy who's out there trying to win AAU titles like they're NBA championships. And that's bothered me for a long time. And if there could be one change that fits all, I know I'm on a soapbox here, I've been ranting to you guys, I'm sorry about that. But if there could be one change, is the NCAA could put some limitations on recruiting to make more emphasis on a kid's high school season and less emphasis on AAU season. And I think that would be a huge change in what happens with high school sports, in all high school sports going forward.
Go ahead, Chris. You go first.
I was going to say, Chad, I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit. Maybe not talk about AAU in general or club sports in general, but I am a big believer in playing multiple sports. Iowa is actually one of the places where you can play 5 high school sports because we play summer baseball and softball. And I always tell people that did not grow up in Iowa, I played high school baseball, and I think it was the closest to being in a minor league sport that you could ever experience in high school, because we didn't have class. Like, we went to hitting in the morning, and then we took infield, and then you'd go home and grab something to eat, and you'd maybe come back and hit the bus, and you'd go play a doubleheader somewhere, and then you'd come back and you'd do it again 2 days later. And so that was fantastic, but it was all about participation, and it was all about being a part of a team, and it was all about accepting a role on the team. And I talk about this a lot. I was a wildly mediocre high school athlete, but I really enjoyed being on teams, and I really learned a lot in terms of how to play a role. And sometimes your role is to sit on the bench and be a good teammate and to work your butt off in practice to help other people be better so that the team can win. And that is not a narrative, I don't think, that is spoken to a lot of high school athletes a lot of times. And I'm a big believer in not specializing. I'm a big believer in allowing your body to recover, right? If you're a volleyball player and you swing your arm 12 months a year the same way on kills, you're going to have shoulder problems by the time you're 17 years old. And so you should have a time of the year where you're not doing that. You should do other things to keep your body in shape and continue to be active every day. But you should try other things. Maybe try some things that maybe you're not great at. It's okay that you're not the best person in everything that you do all the time. And the lessons that you learn, both inside and outside of sports, inside and outside of the classroom, that when you have to work harder, that when you have to play a different role than you play, are lessons that I mean, shoot, guys, we all do it every day. We do it every day in our professional jobs. That I don't love every part of it. I love my job, but I don't love every part of my job. But those are the things that I take on early in the morning. It's the first task I do. I've developed, I didn't like lifting weights in high school either, but you know when I did it? 5:30 in the morning. Those are the things that you take on and say, if I'm going to be good at this, this is one thing I have to do, and I'm going to attack it. And so I'm piggybacking off you, Chad. I would say that maybe I'm not completely where you are, but I think that we're probably in the same sphere.
Yeah.
Chad, I would add one thing. We're certainly going to have you on and talk much more about this as we go forward. I think the AAU growth thing, it is what it is. You can't really put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. I think one of the things that's going to be helpful for girls basketball is to kind of realize here's where things are. How do we meet sort of part of the way there? Because the truth of the matter is a high level girls high school player, they're going to be focusing on her club experience. That's where they're going to see her. I think finding a way to elevate the high school game inside the current parameters is something that I think the group's going to have to do, because it has swung to where, except for football, Chad, that's
Right.
the only place the high school coach is still the go-to for the college coaches. In
It
all
is,
other
but-
sport, it's gone to club.
It is. And I understand that. And, you know, I'm just so much of what I see in the club scene and the AAU scene. And I know I sound like I'm trashing them, and I'm not trying to, because I understand they
I know you are.
exist, but so much that what I see is they're kind of glorifying the coaches. And my friends that referee AAU ball, I mean, these coaches are acting like it's about them. Whereas we know with high school sports, it's never about the coach. It's always about the kids. It's always an extension of the educational process.
Mhm.
And when you get to the AAU level or the club level, it seems to be more about that club coach or that AAU coach and not as much about the kid. But you can't convince parents that. Parents think that they get bought in hook, line, and sinker, what the club coach is saying, what the AAU coach is saying. And I get it. And I know all these kids play summer ball, and I get it. But we could de-emphasize that a little bit. Because if you're a good player, I don't care if you're at Waukee Northwest or if you're at AGWSR, if you're a good high school player in your sport, colleges will find you. Whether you play summer ball or AAU ball or club, if you're a really good player, I promise you a college is going to find you.
Yep. Yeah. And Chad, I love what you said about de-emphasizing or finding a way to elevate the high school game again. I think it's important. I think high school sports is at a somewhat of a tipping point where you've got, hey, listen, participation levels are going down in girls basketball for so many reasons. The games, a lot of times, are lopsided when a top team plays a team that doesn't have the skill level. I think we could talk about it for hours, and we're going to over the next month or so. But I think kind of figuring out how does high school fit in with AAU, I've seen a real change in people in the last 3 or 4 years, to where for a lot of years it was like, well, this is the high school model. We're not going to alter it or kind of deal with the new reality of the club AAU. I think understanding how they fit in with that and in a more partnership way might actually keep more girls out, because that's the whole go. Because as you said, 3% of girls who are playing high school basketball are going to keep playing when they're done. So how do we make high school girls basketball the best experience for all 100%?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the thing, is what is the end goal for every girl, for every boy in high school is different. Some of them once in a while are going to go to the NBA. Many of them are going to go to college and play at various levels from JUCO to Division I. But for some of them, they're just trying to have a good high school experience. Like Chris had, like I had. I couldn't have been more average playing basketball, baseball, and golf at Grundy Center. But I had a great experience. We weren't even very good, but a great experience. Have lifelong friends. I played 1 year of junior college baseball, found out I wasn't very good, and that was the end of that. But that high school experience of being with your friends and playing high school ball, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yep. I think that's a wonderful place to end this. And hey, this was a great podcast, Chad, because we had Chris kind of join partway.
Oh, is it? I was the
absolutely.
catalyst at the end.
Yeah, I mean, Chris brought it in and said I was doing it on behalf of you. Why don't you close us out, Chris? And thanks for a great show, Chad.
Absolutely. Chad, always thank you for joining us. And for those that want more information and more Chad Harberts stuff, please make sure that you go to Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier.com and look up Chad's articles. He is a phenomenal writer as well. Chad, thank you for joining John and I on the Dr. Bowser podcast, powered by Sports Guys Iowa.
Hey, anytime, guys. Anytime.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
You really appreciate it. Have fun tonight.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.